The views expressed in this video are solely those of the host and the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization or entity that may be affiliated with. We encourage the viewer to conduct their own research. For those of us who have been involved in this space for a period of time, the following is quite a common occurrence.
Yeah. And does vaping cause popcorn lungs?
According to research, yes.
And then, of course, there's this.
That gets in. And then the biggest problem we're having now is a lot of people are substituting these flavors with tetrahydrocannabinol and a vitamin E acetate.
I know that sounds scary.
And that's cannabis. So that's cannabis. And that's very big. And a lot of people,
THC.
Yeah, a lot of people who are using this get what we call popcorn lung.
And then finally this.
So popcorn lung is one of the most adverse effects of vaping. So popcorn lung is the hardening and the fibrosis of the lung tissue. If you look at your lung tissue, it looks like a popcorn or a cauliflower. And when it hardens, because of the effect of the oil that actually cooks your lungs.
After watching this video, I often wonder how many years it would take for my lungs to reach a medium rare with all the boiling that's occurring. Unfortunately, it's these kind of comments that feed into the media machine, providing a copious amount of headlines, radio interviews, TV spots, warning about popcorn lung and its association with vaping. We'll see headlines, for example, if you vape or continue vaping, you could get popcorn lung. So what is this popcorn lung? Well, popcorn lung is a term coined by the media in the early 2000s and refers to a rather rare but chronic and severe lung injury called bronchiolitis obliterans. Bronchiolitis obliterans is the scarring and the inflammation of the bronchiole, those small tubes in your lungs. And unfortunately, for many of those who are diagnosed with bronchiolitis obliterans, have a very guarded outcome. In other words, they probably will die. For those who survive bronchiolitis obliterans or live with bronchiolitis obliterans, have a very poor quality of life because it does interrupt your breathing and therefore impacts a lot in your life. And unfortunately, it is irreversible. So where did this popcorn lung term originate from? Well, it goes back to the year 2000, where 8 microwave popcorn factory workers were diagnosed with bronchiolitis obliterans. As being a very rare and chronic disorder, naturally the CDC conducted research and studies at the factory. And what it was established is that these workers were inhaling a dust, and within that dust contained a chemical called diacetyl. Diacetyl is a chemical that's used to create a buttery flavor or creamy note. And it's the diacetyl which was thought to have caused the bronchiolitis obliterans, and hence the word popcorn lung. So how did popcorn lung and vaping get associated? Well, it goes back to the year 2015 when Harvard University conducted research on e-liquids. They tested 51 products out of the available 7,000 on the market at that stage, and unfortunately 39 of those products contained diacetyl, and therefore this very weak correlation was established, is that e-liquids contain diacetyl, diacetyl causes bronchiolitis obliterans, popcorn lung, therefore vaping causes popcorn lung. Unfortunately, that's where it ended, and it became the birthplace of a myth that lives with us even to this day. But if individuals that comment on popcorn lung, or even the media that reports on popcorn lung, had just done a little bit of research and a little bit of digging, and gone back to the original research conducted by Harvard University, they would establish something very important. And that refers to a very old adage that's been used in toxicology and in pharmacology, that the dose makes the poison. The existence of a chemical doesn't necessarily mean it causes the harm. It's the dose. So in this particular study, on average, the cartridges that they had tested with diacetyl contained or exposed the user to 9 micrograms of diacetyl. This is very interesting because an earlier study that was conducted in 2006 looking at diacetyl and other chemicals in cigarette smoke, it was established that on average, one single cigarette exposes the user to 336 micrograms of diacetyl. So if we take a single cartridge of e-liquid which could be used or consumed within a day, and compare it to one cigarette, the cartridge, if it contained diacetyl, on average could expose the user to 9 micrograms of diacetyl, whereas a single cigarette can contain up to 336 micrograms of diacetyl. However, we've always known that it's not just one cigarette. Many smokers around the world consume a pack or even sometimes 2 packs a day. So if we just look at a pack of cigarettes, that can contain up to 6,700 micrograms of diacetyl, which therefore is 750 times more exposure to diacetyl than from a vaping cartridge that contained diacetyl. But with that knowledge, we've never ever associated popcorn lung or bronchiolitis obliterans with smoking. In fact, the causes of bronchiolitis and obliterans is quite vast. It refers to a number of chemicals and viral infections that can be causing bronchiolitis obliterans. But given the fact that we have 1.3 billion smokers around the world, and most of them smoke for a very long period of time, that association of smoking and popcorn lung has never been established. It was only when vaping came around and a study conducted by Harvard University in 2015 that this very, very loose and strange correlation was established, giving birth to a myth that unfortunately has created a lot of misperceptions around vaping. What's also very interesting that's never ever shared in a lot of articles around popcorn lung, in fact very few articles that I've ever seen, is that directly after the research conducted by Harvard University, many health authorities around the world decided to ban diacetyl in any e-liquids. So when they test these e-liquids and they contain diacetyl, they ban those e-liquids and therefore they are not safe to be sold. Areas like the UK, Europe, Australia and Canada have all established a ban on diacetyl in e-liquids. What they also don't tell you is that in 2021, Canada decided to test 825 e-liquids. And of the 825 e-liquids that they've tested, only 2 contain diacetyl. And those 2 were manufactured in the year 2018. So the question has to be asked, those individuals that comment or provide advice around vaping and popcorn lung, have they really done their research? Another question has to be asked is all the doctors and health professionals out there that comment or advise against vaping because of the dangers of popcorn lung. Maybe they should answer the question, how many cases of bronchiolitis obliterans have they personally seen, given how rare it is? And how many of those cases that they've seen can be directly linked to the use of vaping products? And finally, if they've got this so wrong, what other things have they got wrong?